started rolling. What is melanin and what is carbon? Tell us about those two minerals, or whatever they are.
Melanin is not a mineral.
Okay.
Melanin is a word that was used to describe a certain biological function. But that particular identification or category or thing, melanin, is a European identification of what they think activates those neurons in our body that makes us black. But when you break down our body, our biological structure, into what we would have to put it in, which is chemistry, biochemistry, melanin has no place. It's not to be found. What is found in the body that is attributed to melanin is carbon. Carbon not only determines the quality of life in black folks, carbon determines the quality of life in every living plant that exists that is natural. If carbon is absent, there's no life. Melanin, what is it? I don't know.
Why are white people trying to get some? It's a Greek word, melanos.
Well, white folks talk about protein. What is protein? They say one of the 19 amino acids, the building blocks of life. But I know for a fact that that is not a true statement. Because protein, if it was the building block of life, what happened to the gorilla that lives 180 years without eating anything that contains protein? Unless they're going to say that the plants contain protein too. They're always saying things, and because we have no laboratories
Thank you, Chief.
to investigate those things, then we have to swallow it hook, line, and sinker. Miss Frances Welsing mentioned melanin. And I asked her, what is this thing? And I know she could not adequately answer the question because she was trained by someone European. So when you are trained by a European and told these things, you have to regurgitate these things. But no, they are completely in error.
Okay, we're going to take a little break for the phone.
We have to be careful. Remember, it is like a brother recommended that you use comfrey for your bones. That is in the books. From a European philosopher, from a European philosophical base. But when you look at the comfrey bit, you find that comfrey contains starch. Again, another European philosophy. Melanin falls under the same category. It is a belief, not a reality. I was told in Washington, D.C. that I was violating one of the most sacred code or law of nutrition when I deprive Aquila Stroud of protein. So I asked Dr. Steinberg and Dr. Glutt at the Georgetown Pediatric Hospital, did you give her protein 5 times a day? You did. Was she under your care for 2 years? Yes. Now, she did not receive any of those things that you call protein, and she no longer has sickle cell anemia. So where is the validity of this thing we call protein? Is it equity or is it deficit? We don't know. This is why Dr. Sebi, when he embarked on this journey of healing, many was asking me, well, why are you so concerned with the scientific aspect of this thing? I say it is necessary not to heal. To heal, it is necessary to understand the scientific aspect of it. But you must understand the herb that corresponds with the disease that is manifesting. And the only way you could do that in the Western world, and to prove that you would be respected as someone that could be of usefulness, is to enhance oneself with the words that describe certain things. And that is the science of biochemistry. I had to, because my challenges would be from a scientific base. And if I didn't understand science, then I would be lost. And they would gain momentum when they should not. So I decided to go into the scientific understanding of these things we call herbs. And what we found, that there is nothing on the planet that assimilate and could be of usefulness, save that substance is electrical. And the only electric substance on the planet is a natural plant. Not comfrey, golden seal, peppermint, aloe vera, and the rest. They are hybrids. But how many brothers and sisters in America or anywhere in the world qualifies to offer a challenge when we have nothing to test that which we are given for validity? No, I do not subscribe to melanin or to comfrey. So we have to again go back to the drawing board. The Usha research disregard the word melanin. For instance, if melanin determined life, why is it then that when people come to us with nerve problems, with energy problems, we give them the substance known as iron, which is a mineral. Straining that iron with carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, the CHO chain is the chain of life. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Melanin has no place in that biochemical structure. So I'm very extremely sorry.
Okay. Let me ask you a question then. What makes the difference between black and white then? Why is it you're colored and there's somebody else who's not colored, of color?
Well, again, we could easily explain that position. Carbon is the determining factor for your color. The concentration of carbon determines the color black. The higher the concentration of carbon, the greater the color black would express.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
It is carbon, nothing else.
Excellent. Yes, sir. Dr. Sebi, explain to the people watching this tape the word electricity, and how it pertains to its necessity boundaries within the body structure.
Now you see? Now that was the best question that could have been asked. Why? Because if something is of usefulness in my structure, in my biological structure, it must necessarily be electrical. And the only substance that is electrical, that are electrical, are those substances that come from the forest we call the jungle. Because the molecular structure is complete, it's not broken. If something is made by Mother Nature, one could easily use the common sense and see where this stuff is natural, is complete. But if something is made in a laboratory, well, naturally, common sense again shows us it could not be of usefulness. Each mineral on the planet, iron has 12,000 electrons per atom, calcium has 9,000, opium has the specific amount, and so it goes through the whole ramification of life. 142 minerals expresses themselves in a different way because that is necessary to maintain continuity, to maintain that individuality of each plant. The bones is calcium, not the blood. The blood is iron. Now we go back to the question of melanin. Wouldn't it be intelligent to ask one of the promoters of melanin, what is the electromagnetic structure of melanin? What is the amount of electrons per atom that represent this thing we call melanin? Why do we ask the question? Because it is necessary. We want to know, is this thing electrical? Yes. Well, if it is electrical, it has to have a definite amount of electrons per atom, representing that particular thing.
Okay, let me to ask you on that same subject. Let's say the generator that gives us electricity here in this city was cut off, and we wanted to get more electricity. What would we do? Would we stick one in the ground, or how would we work that?
Stick what in the ground?
A wire.
No. What produces electricity?
Electrons.
No way. I was an electrician. I am an engineer. I work in what you call steam generating plants. I have a degree, I have a license in what is known as thermodynamics. We are dealing with physics now. The only thing that produces electricity, the only thing that produces electricity is the friction of copper and carbon. That could be seen in your automobile. Take out your generator and see what it has inside. It has a copper wheel and some carbon brushes that touches against it when it turns. Here's an example. This is the copper wheel in the generating plant that produced the electricity in this room. It is spinning at only 90 revolutions per minute, but against this copper wheel there are carbon brushes, and this is what you see. The spinning of the copper wheel against the carbon brush creates a friction. That friction is called resonance. Resonance is electricity, not electrons. Resonance. The resonance produces the electrons, not before. So now, if electricity is produced by copper and carbon, the friction of copper and carbon, then where do we go in the human body and find the organ that produces electricity? We find that it's the brain. The brain is the center of motor. The nervous system is the conduit that carries the electricity to various points of the body to cause motion. Now, should we ask, what is the composition of the brain? No. It is made up of what? Carbon and copper. The pineal gland is carbon, and the cerebral cortex, copper.
Does everyone?
We not only find that in a human being, we find that in the eel in Brazil that produces electricity to kill his prey. And when you open the eel, all you find is copper and carbon. No melanin.
Well, does everybody have a pineal gland? I was told the other day that everybody doesn't have one. Is that true or not?
If you had no pineal gland, you would not be alive. You would be no motion. It's impossible. Every race has pineal glands. Not every race has thymus glands. Oh, that's different.
Oh, yeah. Well, tell us about those.
The thymus glands. The thymus gland regulates sex. It also maintains energy. The thymus gland also keep you childlike, non-aggressive. But in some races, the thymus gland disappears at age 8. Then one becomes violent in one movement. But now, if the thymus gland disappears in some races at age 8, principally the Caucasian, what helps one to retain the thymus gland within the biology? The presence of what? Carbon. Thank you.
He has a question.
Right. So, Dr. Sebi, what you're saying is that due to the way a lot of medical people study medicine in this country and around the world, they don't understand the difference between, say, electricity and something that's electric.
Well, if we are talking about understanding, what do they understand? Because the question needs to be asked. Remember, the time for common sense has arrived. What do they understand? Don't be afraid. We need to ask these questions. What do they understand? No cure for common cold, no cure for diabetes, no cure for cancer, leukemia, sickle cell anemia, AIDS, blindness, diabetes, and no other disease. Well, if the physician clearly shows us that there is no cure for any disease, what do they understand? So we have to throw that understanding or whatever that premise is out the window. Everything that have ever come from the Caucasian, no, from the physician, has to be thrown in the trash because it's of no consequence. What have they done as far as usefulness in reference to pathology? What have they done? What have they reversed? Nothing. So why should a word be authority? No, we can't use them as some level of thinking, development, or seeing. No, we can't do that because they don't have that. They showed us. How old is the medicine that they are practicing today? It is 265 years old. It started with Bombastus von Hohenheim, only because he was prejudiced when he found out that Hippocrates went to Africa to learn his craft. And the fact of the matter is that Mr. Hippocrates, 2,000 years ago, used herbs to cure every disease known to man. If Mr. Hippocrates used herbs to cure every disease known to man, then 2,000 years later, why aren't we doing so? Because the healer has been educated and the substance he used is artificial. And he is totally unaware of that. Why? Because he learned his craft from an armchair position. They call it armchair research, not field research. And that is very, very vitally important to know the herb from a field perspective, from a field position. Why? Because in the year of 1983, I sent Mr. Adisa Akil to St. John Herb Store in Silver Spring, Maryland, and asked him to buy me a pound of bugleweed. Why did I want the bugleweed? Because someone came to me with a very bad heart problem. They call it mitral stenosis. The weakening of the muscle of the heart also exists. I said, buy me a pound of bugleweed because I have to address this particular disease. When Adisa came back with the bugleweed, I opened the bag. I said, where is the bugleweed? He says, in the bag. I said, no, that is not bugleweed. What is it? I said, that's blue vervain. How do you know? Because I tasted it and it's sweet and I could look at it. That's why I could tell. I didn't learn herbs reading a book. That's what the herbalist does in New York and the United States. So I said, take me back to the store. So he took me back to St. John Herb Store. And there, the young lady, which was black, said to me, well, how do you know that this isn't bugleweed? My boss been selling herb for 25 years. I said, young lady, your boss may be selling herb for 125 years. This isn't bugleweed. Call your boss. The boss came. What's the problem? I said, I don't think there's a problem. There's never been a problem with me. I just don't have those things. But you sold me something that was supposed to be one thing is another. How do you know? Because I know. This is not bugleweed. Bugleweed is bitter. Bitter as gall, and this is sweet. And bugleweed has, in intervals of an inch, has a little ball on the plant. A little ball. Every inch it has a little ball. This has no ball. I said, would you please go and see if the bag that was sent to you that said blue vervain could possibly be the bugleweed? And she goes inside, and guess what happened? The bags were mislabeled. And she apologized. But if I had not known about the herbs and learned about them in the proper way, she would have snowed me. I could give anybody in New York any herb and say it is this or that. They don't know. Because the very herbalists, when I came to New York just 15 years ago, one day telling their recipients to drink carrot juice? Didn't they tell the recipient to take golden seal? Well, when you does such a thing, you're showing and telling the world that you don't know what you're doing. And this is what happened to me when I went on WLIB. And I told the audience at WLIB that carrots were artificial. They all denied me. 1 year later, when Nova came up with the program, that not only was it artificial, they showed that it was made by crossing the Queen Anne lace and the wild yam. You do not mix herbs unless they belong to the same valence. What do I mean by that? I mean this. In the kingdom of life, a yarrow plant, which is known as the Queen Anne lace, could only and will only pollinate another Queen Anne lace. Why? Because the pollen carries the same amount of valence as the other. And through that process we known as chemical affinity, they join. Now, there is another mixture that we are totally unaware of beside the natural one, which is chemical affinity. The other one is a mechanical mixture. What is a mechanical mixture? A mechanical mixture is when you cut a sliver in a plant, like the Queen Anne lace, and you cut a sliver in another plant, and you take out the heart of the stem, and you put it inside the Queen Anne lace, and you tape it. That is hybridization. Black people knows nothing about this. And now this plant produces something other than what it was originally, because now you're uniting Queen Anne lace with wild yam. You don't get the wild yam or the Queen Anne lace, you get what? A carrot. They went further to show that it was made in Holland. And little before that article came out, I had returned to the drawing board to find this carrot. I knew it was artificial. Why? Because it doesn't produce seed to reproduce itself. Carrot just does not produce a seed that reproduces itself. So I knew it was artificial. And beside that, it contains starch. When I go back to do my research, guess what I found? That the German made the lamb, the German made the barley. I said, oh no. This is why the Arabs are so indebted to Germany. Because the German make the Arab food. The Arabs has no food, you know. Arabia never had food. Arabia doesn't have food now. Nowhere in Arabia you find natural food. Everything the Arabs eat, the very Quran that they read came out of Germany. Also their food. If the German removed the food from the Arab, they starve to death. Oh, this is nasty, isn't it? Oh, yes, it is. It's treacherous.
You know what we're going to do? We're going to take a slight break here, and then we're going to continue. So if anybody has any questions,
write it down.
Get it ready, because we got about hit fate.
Because there's nothing. What can they go?
What? Go what? They never had anything natural in Arabia.
He continues on. And what was that last point that you were making? Or does anybody know? Or is there a question? All about the Arabs. Arabia has no food.
You see, many of us blacks hold the Arabs supreme. Not in my book. Because how could someone eat and be smart when the very food that you eat influences the brain to allow you to think? And if you eat the wrong food, you're going to think the wrong things. And that, again, is common sense. If you take a diesel automobile and put in it gasoline, what happens?
It can run.
It cannot run.
If you just put gasoline
in a diesel engine?
Oh, no, I didn't hear that part of the question.
You can't.
No.
So the human body responds the same way. The black race has never had anyone to really show us what we should or should not eat. The only man that came was messenger of our honorable Elijah Muhammad. The only man that said, stay away from the pork. And when I, Sebi, sat and ate with the messenger in his house on 3837 South Woodlawn Avenue in Chicago, the messenger personally told me and Brother Harry Nance from New Orleans that we should not be eating meat at all.
Well,
And we should not be eating anything on this menu because it is poisonous to us. But if he, the messenger of Allah, Elijah Muhammad, had told the black race of the United States to stop everything, who would listen then? So he had to he couldn't cold turkey us. He was very intelligent. He removed the pork. And just by removing the pork and many other little things, they rebelled and they said they wasn't going to jump to eat the pork. Telling us that we have been conditioned. No, I don't think of brainwashing. I'm talking about that conditioning. They have made us addicts. Which black person in America eats food that is consistent with their African ancestry? Don't even go there, because none. Then we go to the Maya, Honduras, where I was born, this Latin American country. I asked a question to one of the guides that take the tourists in and out the ruins and explaining about the Maya. I asked him, sir, do you mind if I ask a question? He said, no. What did the Maya eat? A lady who was part of the tour, the group, jumped up and said, corn, of course. The man looked at me and looked at the lady and said, lady, if the Maya ate corn, this man here would not have asked that question. He would have known that. So there is something about that corn that we have to question.
oh no.
Then he turned back to me and he said, what did they eat? I said I could begin with the teosinte, the cabrote, the chipiling. These are natural greens that grows in the forest of Honduras. Natural green that grows in the forest. The teosinte is a plant that produces a kernel that looks like a corn, but the difference is it is non-starch. They make the tamales from the teosinte, and they mix the chipiling in it, which is a green, and they make these tamales, and they still do in Santa Rosa de Copan. And when you all come to Honduras, I will introduce you guys to these tamales. That's right, all natural. The Maya did not eat corn, rice, beans, chicken, eggs, pork, cows. Why? Because these things did not exist in Honduras when Christopher Columbus came. They only ate those things that were natural. But the guide knew that he didn't know what the Maya ate. And how many Africans in Africa knows what their ancestors ate? They don't know. What does the African eat today? Rice. That's all they have. And rice is a poison.
Chicken.
Not only is it starch, and it is because it contains, and it converts into carbonic acid, but it contains cyanide.
Well, how is it those little, I'm going to say something wrong here. The Burmese people, like Chinese, Japanese, them people, how they eat it every day.
But what about that? Because they eat it every day. Are they the healthiest people on the planet? You never seen a Chinese or a Japanese walk straight. His spine just cannot hold up straight. He always walk with a drop in his spine. He just can't do it. He eats nothing but starch. The Chinese should give credit, and a lot of credit, to the Italian that went down there. What is his name? Marco Polo. Because at least he took them the wheat kernel that they could make their noodles. Before this man, what is his name? The Italian Marco Polo, Chinese could make noodles.
But what about their Buddhist monks or whatever, Confucius? But they were still eating the same poison.
What else do they have to eat? There's only one man came out of China that understood that, was Dr. Li Cheng Fu. Dr. Li didn't need anything to grow under the ground. No, he didn't. He just didn't do that. And Dr. Li, according to the history, lived 125 years. You see? 165 years. And he died here in New York. Or it was recorded in New York. He died in China. But he was a Chinaman that I respect. Like when I go to India, I talk to Raja Gopalachari. He's a friend of mine who lives in Calcutta.